And then I do think, like you've got that push. What people see that is getting attention out there are the companies. We're burn rate. It's the amount of users. Remember that crap going around there? Well, how many of those companies that were just focused on the amount of users, very few of them exist. There's a handful of. It's cash flow, and net income. Yeah. Those two things.
That's right.
Focus that will give you longevity.
Welcome. Good morning.
Good morning. How have you been?
Pretty good. We got an interesting topic. Tips from a bank CEO on managing cash flow.
All right. It was a few hours ago. You said, "Hey, we're going to talk about cash flow," and so then I thought back of how I use cash flow, and running a bank is unlike another business to where cash flow is not necessarily an issue because we have that large availability because
you can tap into it. Yeah,
correct.
If you need
we
to.
Take on deposits and cash flow is a move of cash. What do you have? Liquidity, availability.
Right.
Cash flow is not net income.
Right.
But in essence, I always looked at the cash flow internally as, I didn't start this organization, so I didn't have those pain points of that cash flow to start an organization.
Sure.
But as far as lending and financing and seeing companies struggles with cash flow, I've got that insight.
Yes.
But on the banking side of managing it, cash flow, yes, we manage it very closely as far, the things that banks are looking at, we're always looking at liquidity events. When people have a deposit, they deposit money into a bank. What a lot of them don't realize is that deposit for us is a liability because it's an IOU. That's not our money. We owe you. So if you deposit $1 million in your checking account and have $1 million balance, that's yours. Any given time, you can take that $1 million out.
Yeah.
Generally, if we've got 10 customers with $1 million, $10 million, that whole 10 million is just not sitting there. Right. We need to earn money on that. So that's part of our cash flow, and we got to have it available for that. Now, granted, you're not going to have 100% of your customers at any given time say, "Hey, I want all that needs." They will if they think you're going under.
Right.
They're going to run it, and that's a run on a bank. Hey, we took deposits, and that happened to Silicon Valley Bank.
That's right.
So, but I don't think that's going to help any of the listeners as far as business cash flow. But I wanted to,
but it's good
get
perspective.
that
Yeah, good perspective because of how you have to see cash flow versus how the typical business owner sees it. But you do see how they have to operate.
Yes.
You're looking at all the financial statements and you're qualifying them for lending. So,
absolutely. Yeah. And so cash flow is make it or break it because if you don't have cash in the bank, you can't pay your bills right now.
That's right.
And let's say you get your cash in later. Oh, I paid my bills, but now you're already halfway into the next month's of bills or you're 2 months in, you got to pay that. So cash flow, you have to have a very close watch on, especially in starting your business and going forward and learn what is reconcile because a business is going to look at their bank account and say, okay, I have $10,000 in my bank account. Well, they have to have inventory for whatever they're selling. So how much inventory do they have? Do they need to use that cash immediately for inventory to resell?
Right.
So they've got that flow. How long of it of them cash going out to inventory to then now that inventory is being sold to coming back?
That's right.
So really, I think the first thing on cash flow is analyzing the time frame of what you're going out in your raw inventory that you're putting that cash into that raw inventory and how long it takes you to ultimately take that raw inventory, whatever it is, whether it's your reselling software or it's, a physical, steel that you're then modifying to then sell. And then when you are selling it, what are the terms? Are you getting instant back? Are you selling it credit cards, cash?
How quick are you getting it back?
Or is it 30-day net? Or are you dealing with a major corporation like Disney that says, we're not going to pay your butt for 6 months?
Yeah, we won't pay you for a while. Yep.
So,
or the government.
Oh, yeah, horrible. So, I mean, it's great to have a contract. Okay, great, they can pay you, but you better build into that price.
Yeah.
that cash flow.
That's
so I
right.
think that would be the first of knowing cash out of hand to buy my railroad, how long it takes to get back.
Now, do you have sort of a formula or a way of thinking about buffer, liquidity or cash, like working capital, we might call it, to provide a buffer around those timelines? So, you're thinking you've been in business for X amount of time. We typically have about this much going out, this much coming in on these timelines. We need to buffer by X percent, to make sure that we're good. Almost like a reserve.
It's kind of like a financial advisor is going to say, you need to have 6 months of your, not what you're spending now, but 6 months if you didn't have a job. What are your hard bills that you have to cover? What is your, what is your mortgage? What is your light bill? That. So definitely I would say the rule of thumb would be 6 months, and a lot of it's hard too, but it depends on how long it takes in your markup.
Yeah.
That you can easily turn it. And consistency too. You can bring that down and expand when you have repeat buyers and historical contingencies too.
Yeah. Yeah. I think too, just like, and as an aside that comes to mind is, if you have investors that start with you from day one, they're putting cash in, and that is going to determine how fast or slow you run. They're going to sort of dictate, here's the runway of cash. Here's how fast we want you to run. We're all on the same page. That's going to be a little different than a person starting a business, or being in business for a period of time. However, both of those will align at some near future point where you have to demonstrate that you can manage your cash.
Correct.
You can't just, even if you have investors or SBA loan or whatever, may put you out in front, and you got the cash to kind of get going. At some point, you're going to have to know what those numbers are pretty quickly.
There, many years ago, we had a new business relationship customer that moved over their business relationship, and they were proud. They had a wonderful business. And what was really nice to see was the individuals. It wasn't like they started out the business in their 20s and made it. Now they're later into their late 40s, early 50s, and boom, they saw an opportunity and they took it and just going like gangbusters. So this was like the first time they had a lot of now new cash flow.
Yeah.
It pissed it away.
No.
Within the first month, I saw that count, and I'm like, this I already knew it was going to be a liability for us, the actions of what they were performing.
Yeah.
And of course, good business, excited. But in their mind, I remember them saying, "Oh, we deposit $500,000 in your bank a month." 20-year-old Ryan would say, "Oh, that's wonderful."
Yeah.
Now I'm like, okay, great.
Yeah.
What is it? I'm looking at
is it staying
average balance, and it really didn't.
Yeah.
So
That's
$500,000 was coming in. I don't even think their average balance was $10,000.
Yeah.
That is scary.
Yeah.
That is scary, because as soon as that money came in, it was out.
Yeah.
And I don't think they were under 30 days and getting paid.
Mm-hmm.
So, the largest portion of that coming in had to be salaries. So it wasn't an industry. A lot of it was hard work and physical labor doing this. So they didn't have to buy a ton of equipment. They had to have equipment. They had trucks and had service and go out to the locations and but a lot of the ongoing after the first capital expenditures were payroll.
Yeah.
So that's understandable.
For themselves primarily?
Just for
all
they were paying themselves,
the workers.
Respectably.
Yeah.
But then it was very quickly when they saw that cash in, boom, it was out. New Harleys, new this, and it was like,
okay. So they were okay. Mm-hmm. So just to dig in that a little bit, were these big commercial accounts that they sold, like contract accounts, or was it that they sold a lot of smaller accounts, or do you know?
They had a mixed use.
Okay.
They had some big accounts.
Yeah.
But it was, labor and going out.
Yeah.
But ultimately what they didn't know, and then the cash would hit. Mm-hmm. So you've got to realize on that, they should have known in their project and said, okay, this project brought in, $200,000 over the course of 60 days. we know our payroll associated to that work, and our net profit was, I don't know, $40,000. Well, out of the $40,000, okay, you're going to tax. You need to know that you're, okay, great. Are you in 25, 40,000, at least 10,000 of it is going to go to taxes.
Right.
So really, out of that 40,000 net, that 10,000, you've got use of it to April 15th.
Right. But not necessarily
if you're
by a Harley.
Yeah. But if you're not cognizant of that,
unless you're driving to the job site every day.
Yeah. If you're not cognizant of that, you're going to spend that cash flow, and come April 15th, you're SOL.
Right.
So,
yeah. Well, I mean, I think it happens to the best of.
Yeah, because they can see, oh my goodness, my balance in my bank account has got hundreds of thousands of dollars. But you're like, well, out of that $200,000 that accumulated, your net income was really higher than that $200,000. You're going to have $70,000 and, tax consequences coming up.
Yeah.
And, so you really got to.
Yeah. And it's also, in addition, planning ahead for next quarter, the following quarter, even the next potential year, maybe not that far out, but looking at sales projections and saying, especially if you're selling products, if we have inventory and we're buying and selling these type of things, what's that trend going to look like if we scale up? Or can we get volume discounts by, you're looking at all of that. But you have to plan for how those figures are going to change.
And we're in Florida. We have tourism. So that's not every day of the week. Granted, people going to Disney every single day, but in general, there's ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
So,
right.
You better know, if your company's, biggest event is Bike Week.
Yeah.
That Bike Week better, help you all the way to Biketoberfest in October.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good point, I think, for businesses that are focused on tourism and attractions and, recreation, because they tend, if you're not more savvy or you haven't had that problem before, usually people have to have a problem and they learn from it. It's easy to go down that road of, oh, hey, we did this one thing. We had a fireworks stand, or maybe 10 of them, because I don't think you can make any money on one fireworks stand, but you have 10 fireworks stands.
I'll be surprised. People buying like crazy.
Yeah. And then you get all the cash in, but you can't sell it again for half a year or whatever. Looking ahead and saying, having
New Year's and July 4th,
some long-term plan, unless the cash from that is, earmarked for a particular thing. I think the difference between a small business owner and a kind of a mid-size business owner that has started the company and stuck with it, not just brought in as a CEO, is that they can see they have a longer term vision. They start to think longer term and act accordingly. So these things you're talking about, with cash flow, if you really play this out, you're safe for making payroll for X amount of months. You're safe for buying inventory for X amount of months, and you think about your worst case scenarios. And that starts to really build out a foundation for what the company is going to be. And it's taking it out of the owner's pocket in the short term and putting it into the future of the company, which starts to build things like culture, and long-term employees that are there and have ownership over their roles and those type of things. Because when you come to work every day, you're not thinking about cash. You're thinking about, okay, how are we going to work on this thing?
Correct.
I saw this. I've seen a couple times a clip of Jeff Bezos talking about how he and all of his senior executives, they work 2 years out in the future. Now, of course, at current day, we're talking about a very different thing,
Yes.
than your average small business owner. But they started as a small business. They were funded, obviously, and had cash, but they started and grew it. But he and his top leadership, they only want to spend their time in, I don't know how many quarters out, 8 to 10 quarters out. And he was saying that, the impact that we're having this quarter, the numbers come in and they're like, oh, congratulations on a good quarter. And he's like, well, that's great. But that quarter was baked, 10 quarters ago, because that's what we're working on now.
Yes. And the work you put in today is for future income.
Correct. Now that's extreme compared to our audience. But I think if you just take the notion of that and apply it to your business and say, okay, I want to work, 1 quarter out, that's unbelievable. I mean, if I was there personally and in that mindset of like, okay, I'm working 1 or 2 quarters out and that's where I live. That's such a freeing thing, but cash is what's going to support that.
Yeah. And absolutely. You've got to plan for that.
Yeah.
And I always like to plan for things that are, you've got, there's not one linear path in running a business like, oh, I'm only going to focus on this. Mm-hmm. You can do several paths at the same time.
Yes.
Because to do your long range goals, it may not take 8 hours of your current day. No. That may only be 10 minutes of today's, that you're doing a little bit every day to hit that 10-year goal.
Yep.
And there may be things that you're going to do in 5 years from now. That may require 20 minutes a day.
Yep.
And things that are going to have an immediate effect in a month from now.
Yep.
2 months. So we think about that as far as the marketing and different things.
Right.
Okay, where to spend your dollars. Is this going to be in the ether and exist for a split second? Mm-hmm. Better have made a return off of that split second. Or are there things that are just going to hold, and now you've got a catalog of resources that you can go back to year after year and build out.
Yep.
And those are things that are hard to do when you're first startup, where you're trying to get it.
Everything.
But then as you get that first year, I mean, to me, the any business that has had longevity, they have planning and they have procedures, they have policies.
Yeah. Well,
they build on that.
Right, but they also have a great team. So the team is really what frees the owner / CEO up.
Oh yeah.
If you can build an infrastructure of high quality team, and even if it's a small team, 5 people that's running the company.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be 20.
Those 8 hours or the 15 hours a day that you were doing everything now turn to 8. Then they turn to 5. Then they turn to 3. Then they turn to 1 or less of that type of work. Now you have the entire day free. You can start to manage that time as you're pushing forward into the future.
Yeah, when you start seeing, things, either sales happen today based on something that you did a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that is a really cool feeling.
It's very cool.
And I've been lucky enough to see that happen and mature over time, that it wasn't like, okay, what I did back then is gone. It's still carried forward and had life.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Cash flow is a very important part of the business, if not one of the most important pieces. So glad we had this conversation.
Yeah, but I mean, cash flow, and then I do think like you've got that push. What people see that is getting attention out there are the companies. We're burn rate. It's the amount of users. Remember that crap going around there? Well, how many of those companies that were just focused on the amount of users, the amount of very few of them exist. There's a handful of. It's cash flow, and net income. Yeah. Those two things.
That's right.
Focus that will give you longevity.
That's right.
Not, I'm throwing it all in to get the amount of users, and I'm going to monetize the amount of users. Okay, yeah, because they all get on that data thing, and it's like, is your data even worth it? Or by the time you get 1 million users, there's other data points that are going to blow away yours anyways, and yours are worthless.
Yeah.
I think focusing on that
volume of users just for the sake of
goodness.
Volume of users, it's sort of like the same conversation of, this is a great business idea because look at how big the market is. Like, the viable market is very huge. Well, most businesses have a huge viable market, but how are you going to do in it? Who in that market is actually going to buy it, and at what margin, and so on and so forth. It's a similar conversation that I put it on business owners that start those businesses. We're mostly talking about SaaS, fintech, those type of businesses, but it's the investors. They're the ones, enabling that behavior.
They are. I'm so glad, and I'm glad to see them, in that realm, so many of them going to the wayside, because it was, why are you keep throwing money at this? It's not, you've gotten several years into it.
Yeah.
And it's not working. Why? I don't understand it. That just blows my mind.
They keep buying.
But yet, okay, you're managing somebody else's fun. Yeah. We need to put a crack down on that. Like, people make, shitty decisions most part when they're dealing with other people's money. And it's not. You should be tighter when you're dealing with others. You got a fiduciary capacity that you are going to protect other people's money.
Whether it's a loan or an investment.
Absolutely.
Either way.
You got to have them. You got to protect them.
Yep. All right. On to the next one.